In a world where businesses are under pressure to grow fast and stay authentic, how do you build teams that can do both and do it sustainably? Hello and welcome to the Boostara podcast. I am your host, James. On the Boostara podcast, we speak to leaders in business and uncover the truths and insights from their amazing experiences. At Boostara, we help businesses boost growth, cut costs, and gain better business insights. If you would like to learn more about how we can help you, type the word growth into the comments below, and I'll be sure to reach out. Today, after the madness of half term, I am very happy to share that we are joined by Stephanie Halliday, Director of Leitmotif Partners. Hello, Steph.
Hi, good morning, James.
Good morning, Steph. First, appropriate question, where are you calling us from?
So today I am sitting just outside Edinburgh. It's very sunny this morning, so in sunny Scotland.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. As soon as you say Edinburgh, I ran the Edinburgh Marathon at the beginning of the year, so my recent memory of Edinburgh is that of pain.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Pain,
Congratulations,
wind,
well done.
rain, a lot of different emotions. But, Stephanie, for those of our listeners that are not familiar with yourself, with what you do, could you give us a little bit of a brief overview of your sort of journey to where you are today with Leitmotif?
Of course, yes. So I have, for my sins, been in recruitment and executive search and talent solutions now for just over 20 years. In fact, my husband and I were at a dinner party recently, and he helpfully reminded me that I'm now in my third decade, which was slightly sobering. So, yeah. But I left school, went to university, studied computer science, interestingly, back then, and came out. And at that time, could really see no path for me in technology per se. I felt like you had to be really entrenched in coding in a dark basement somewhere. And I felt like I was much more of a people person and kind of fell into recruitment. I trained in exec search and selection with a London boutique agency, and then I've worked for a number of fantastic brands over the course of my career. And then this year decided that, I think a lot of people who work in recruitment have an entrepreneurial itch that they might need to scratch. And so this is me proverbially scratching. So I started Leitmotif Partners to do it my own way, to do it myself. And that's where this has come from. So I specialise in marketing, communications, digital and commercial recruitment. And the aim of Leitmotif is to work with businesses who have sustainability and purpose woven into strategy. So business for good.
Amazing. And, given what you said, your third decade, I don't want to dwell on that, but you obviously have fantastic insights, into the general recruitment industry and how that's changed over time. And, I'm curious to know from yourself, what trends have you seen change? And I should give you some context here that we've had a lot of different recruitment specialists from different niches join on. So ranging from volume to food and beverage, and everyone kind of gives different insights on the changing trends, if at all, within their particular niche. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what have you seen change, and how has it impacted the way that you're now kind of operating with Leitmotif?
Well, there's different ways to look at the changes, because over the last few decades, there's been significant change in the broader recruitment industry. You tend to find that, recruitment rolls in cycles. So there's fundamental change of technology, the adoption of technology, the iteration of technology, the rolling back to, a hybrid model of what works, what doesn't. We've seen changes in adoption of applicant tracking systems, or, I remember, this speaks to my age in a slightly frightening way, but when I first joined the industry, email was kind of new. There was still businesses that were faxing CVs or posting CVs. So in terms of the change in the industry, it's been significant. And also over the time period that we're talking about, we've seen huge global macro changes. For example, the financial crisis, COVID. So all of the changes around that have been significant. In industry, marketing, communications, digital, oh my goodness, tech has impacted how people do their jobs across these industry sectors significantly. So we've had to respond to that as recruiters. Where our candidates and clients are upskilling, we have to keep on top of that as well, and emulate that so that we can find the right talent and make the right matches. the biggest change, the biggest shift for everybody, I think, is probably remote working, hybrid working, something that we're all grappling with on an ongoing basis at the moment. So yeah, lots of change. That's the most
Yeah.
consistent thing, isn't it? Really, change.
What do you think those, how have those changes really impacted? Is it just in terms of speed, how recruiters can really help fill roles and scale their own operations to a greater extent?
Yeah, I think depending on the type of recruitment you're doing, so obviously you spoke to having had guests on talking about volume recruitment. I have never worked in volume recruitment. My recruitment has always been focused on boutique niche exec search, which is extremely relationship driven. So much of the time, people who've been in the position that I have been in have maybe had a relatively negative experience of technology and the impact on recruitment,
Yeah.
because automation can risk taking away the human element of the relationship piece, the chemistry piece, the innate understanding of humans, values, and drivers. So, of course, technology improves efficiencies, it improves speed of hiring, it can improve through automation candidate and client experience, but there's always the flip side that we need to be mindful of too, which can have counter effects.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess over time you've seen recruitment firms, companies hiring in a good way, and I suppose in a negative way. And I guess has that really sort of been the spark for the way that you're bringing sustainability into the way that
Yeah.
you recruit now?
I think that, the sustainability piece for me is wanting to work with values and drivers and authenticity at the core of what I do and how I deliver. But also working, we always say that we want to work with businesses that are culturally aligned to
Yeah,
our own delivery, right? But that can be very subjective. So how do we really measure that? And I think for me, the way that I can measure that is when I speak to a client and I can see that they're investing, particularly given the headwinds that we're all facing right now, at a political, um, economical, social level. Businesses that truly are investing strategically in sustainability, purpose, values, operating with integrity at their core, that's really important to me. I think that's where we should all really be focusing and heading.
so I mean, in your mind, just to make it, I suppose, clear for the audience, when you talk about sustainability in terms of your recruitment, it's
Hmm.
it's it's sustainability on behalf of the client. Like,
Hmm.
they have that in mind in terms of their own values, their own operations. But I
Absolutely.
guess, does it also come in terms of sustainably hiring, that,
Yeah.
you're not just having a candidate come in and they're going to be gone within 2 months?
So it all speaks to the same, doesn't it? Because what we all are trying to do is create something that creates commercial results, but in the most economical, efficient, and sustainable way. So it all ties in together. When I first spoke about sustainability, it was really driven by um, the shifts in the business landscape around ESG reporting, for example, making sure that when you're looking at a supply chain, that everybody is inherently compliant within a supply chain to deliver through sustainable practice. That's really important. There have been some counter headwinds, as I just alluded to there, in the broader landscape over the last year and a half politically, that have maybe affected the focus for that for some businesses. Because unfortunately, at the moment, the truth is that many businesses are focused on surviving, not
Yeah.
necessarily investing and doing things the best way that they can, just being able to survive. So my method of delivering is to ensure that my practices are as sustainable environmentally as possible, but also in terms of the activities and the outcomes that we have, that they are manageable, accessible, and they're successful over a long period.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of the shift towards the candidate experience, because I've seen this across different companies, and in different hiring practices as well, is that a lot of recruiters will say that their candidates are going to stick.
Yeah, yeah,
They're going
yeah,
to stick. They're going to stay, right?
yeah,
But that's a huge source of waste for companies when,
of
I
course.
suppose, they don't have, well, they know what they want, they know what they need, but they're just not good at keeping their staff there. And I
Yeah.
think this is an issue that's sort of exacerbated with Gen Zers as well, that are
Mm.
more critical of the places that they work and the atmosphere within which they're working, and the future with which they have within the company. And a lot of companies
Hmm.
simply don't have that kind of environment, installed in the
Hmm.
company. I guess how do you audit for that, and how do you, amongst the broader, compliance, ESG,
So you can never
compliance,
guarantee.
how do you find the right kind of clients to work with?
So you can never guarantee candidates stickability, right? Because there comes a point where there's only so much influence you can have in a candidate joining a business. And also there's so many changeable factors that candidates will experience when they join a business. It could be the perfect match on the day that they join. Personal things can evolve, business scenarios can evolve, and journeys can diverge. And that's sometimes the case. But
Uh,
the reality is that I think certainly over the last 10 years, businesses have become increasingly conscious of the importance of authenticity and employer brand, investing in employer brand, investing in their employee value proposition. So
uh,
really looking at their workforce, looking at the culture that they're creating, looking at their values and drivers so that they're not just, words that are plastered on a wall, but they're actually being lived through the business, and looking at ways that they can match those values with the things that they provide and the environment that they create. So whether that's to do with the benefits that they provide, whether it's to do with the cultural, social environment that they create, they need to create an environment that speaks to the culture they want to have in reality. When we
mm,
then go out to match candidates, and this is where I think recruitment is incredibly valuable, is we know our candidates. I have my network of candidates who I know inside out. I know who will work well in one environment and just will not work well in another. And it's about being able to make those coherent matches to get the best possible chance of having a relationship that's going to stand the test of time. It's unusual, I have to say, in my experience, to have any catastrophic failures, because you go through a process and there's sense checks the whole way. There's initial screening, there's competency-based interviews, there's values and drivers assessments, there's behavioural assessments, there's all sorts of tests that we can put in place
uh,
to try and take the subjectivity out of it. But it's about knowing your candidates and knowing your cultural base for your clients as well.
Now, I guess you can get a good feel from speaking with owners, speaking with directors,
Yeah.
where they stand in terms of the wider sustainability,
Yeah.
of the company, as well as the way that they're actually managing managing their company and taking it forward, moving it forward.
Well, know the candidates within the business as well. So, you would be surprised at how often people who work in recruitment kind of have a behind the scenes innate knowledge of what's happening within businesses, because we speak to their employees regularly,
Yeah.
whether they're actively looking for a job or whether it's just part of the network. We hear about what happens behind the scenes. And if businesses are not operating authentically and they're not really doing what they say they do on the tin, we hear about that. It's very difficult to operate and not have that sneak out from behind the ranks. So
Uh,
we get a good sense. It's about being really involved and immersed in the market, I guess, but also being really robust with clients. So if you're taking a
mm,
briefing, it's that we don't just take a job order. It's necessary to, if it's a new client particularly, we have to get to know them. We have to spend time with them. We have to get under the
yeah.
skin of the drivers of the business, the challenges in the business, and look at ways that we can genuinely add value. So.
Mm. And that changes according to the growth of the company as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And particularly in a market like we are in right now, you have a lot of different variables where businesses are on quite different stages of their journey, whether that's to do with sustainability, whether it's to do with an ESG journey, whether it's to do with a
Right.
B Corp journey, whether it's to do with an AI adoption journey, whether it's scaling, whether it's restructuring. There's a lot of very changeable landscapes in the business community at the moment, for sure.
You reminded me very vividly of a previous company I worked for, and actually one of the things that we brought in, there was a lot of initiatives for the companies. The company went from 30 members of staff to 200
Right.
over about a 5-year period. So it was slow, steady, sort of strong
Mhm.
growth. But there was a huge push for developing the culture within the company.
Yep.
So a lot of staff benefits, a lot of just general initiatives, but then also with the management. So
Mm.
it became very clear that um, the management were being selected because the executive management liked that person, so they just put them in that role.
Yep.
So there became a process of, okay, we only internally hire, but we're going to have to put everyone through a kind of system, right?
Hmm.
And a fair system to find that right manager. But then over time, it became clear that yeah, as you grow, you can't see everything from
Yeah.
a director level, from an executive. You don't know everything that's happening within each department. And there were problems sprouting up between staff members and management. And the one thing that solved that was putting in a management assessment. So
Hmm.
the staff members had the opportunity to assess their direct line manager.
Yep.
I think it was every 3 or 4 months.
Hmm.
And they were then accountable. Obviously, they were accountable for their own KPIs, right?
Yep.
But in terms of actually how they were looking after their
Uh-huh.
members of staff, which is the whole point of management, and
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
and then affecting the whole culture and the whole growth of the company. Because if the employee churn kept up at
Yeah.
a really high rate, then that's stopping that
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A really interesting kind of initiative. But yeah, I'm wondering, Steph, when companies come to you or you reach out
Mm.
to companies and they hear about, sustainability and the way that you work, what are those kinds of common misconceptions that companies are having?
Um, If it's about my own delivery, I suppose it's not necessarily that I will only work with companies that are, I don't know, creating an eco-green manufactured product. That's not what it's about. It's about
Yeah.
businesses that have values that are rooted in modernising how they're delivering, that is human first, people
Mhm.
focused. The sustainability piece is something which is largely measurable and speaks to the broader culture within a business. It's also a journey that we all have to be going on from a broader view of the world and where we're at right now. So,
Mm.
in terms of, I suppose, any misunderstandings or misinterpretations of what I do, it doesn't have to be a green product. That's not what it's about. It's about modern, sustainable thinking. And also the purposeful piece is, a key part of the advisory that I do in addition to pure recruitment delivery. So, without putting a bum on a seat, I work with businesses to consult
Mm.
around recruitment process, talent strategy, talent solutions from end to end, and adding value wherever that's required. Um, but employer brand and EVP communications is a significant part of what I do that plays into driving the awareness of sustainability and purpose that exists within a business and taking that out to market. So I don't know if I can necessarily speak to any, misconceptions about what I do other than, I think each business is on its own journey and we're all at quite varying stages within the sustainability journey. But my belief is that we all need to be at least certainly heading in the same direction on that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. You have to have alignment
Yeah.
with clients from the first point. I mean, do you have example you could share with us of a kind of success story of a client that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, over 20 years, there's been lots of fantastic success stories. There's been all sorts of different types of stories, I suppose. If I think more recently in starting up Leitmotif, I guess quite an exciting opportunity I had is not necessarily the sexiest opportunity, but speaks to where the market is right now. So, and I've said this to a number of people, but specific example of offering myself up as a turkey for Christmas, as they would say, in so much as an old client of mine is now a CEO of a manufacturing business. He had cut on recruitment spend. So, recruitment agency being the necessary evil, completely cut out of budgetary spend. But he asked me to come in because what he had identified over this period of removing recruitment consultancy from process, they'd noticed that there'd been an increase in candidates dropping out of internal process.
Mm.
They had seen an increase in the amount of rejections of offer stage. And this is a manufacturing business based in the Midlands in England, and it's very competitive to get talent in the manufacturing space. So a lot of it is based on money. based on remuneration, daily rate, whatever it might look like. This is a client that has, over the last 5 to 7 years, heavily invested in employer brand, really looked at the culture, really looked at the employee value proposition to make that a real differentiator for people joining the business and staying with the business. So that kind of hurt when they were looking at those stats. So I went in and did an audit of the recruitment process, at what was happening from the front end of role scoping right through to offer management, onboarding, and then beyond. And there were some key things that were really clearly identifiable. But one of the first main things is that, their direct hiring managers who now are owning process are not natural interviewers. That's not, what they've been trained to do, to be able to identify, select, interview, and determine the best fit for a job. And they also don't necessarily naturally sell the business and the bigger proposition. So I did a lot of training with middle management to manage process and work with the board to implement a shift in process. So that's been really exciting. And a lot of what they're doing, because they're manufacturing, has sustainability at the core. They operate within the European environment, so they have ESG markers and reporting to meet, and they're able to speak to the market about that much more coherently now. So they're attracting people who are really cognizant of all the great stuff that they're doing and implementing and committing to. So
that's a really vivid example of I suppose the dangers of hiring internally, right?
Yeah.
And the value of having an external partner, because exactly that, and you can have management depending on the specific sort of life point of a company. But often if it's younger, then management have been put in place because they're good at their initial job, but they're actually not very good at managing, or they
yes,
haven't been
that happens all
trained
the
to
time.
be
Yeah.
managers, right? And then as they grow, okay, well, they fix that problem, and okay, we're spending too much money on recruiters. Let's do it in-house, internally. But the people that have been selected, they don't
Different skill
have
set.
20 years experience, 30 years experience, of which they've
Absolutely.
been getting from using external recruiters up to this point. So then they're just handicapping themselves
And the
in.
managers are the first to say that they miss the support that they've got, because,
Yeah.
they feel like they're, flying blind. However, hopefully, and this is, I suppose, the analogy of the turkey for Christmas, hopefully we've given them, skill sets and training that will give them an increased level of confidence and capability in that. And actually, in truth, that's what they need right now. The level of hiring that they're doing it has reduced as a reflection of the market. I mentioned before about the cyclical nature of recruitment. I fully believe, and I apologise to the CEO client that I have for this, but I fully believe that this will come back full circle again. Their need to hire will increase through growth, through scaling again. And at that point, it will be more than a direct process can facilitate, because people have a day job to do. So therefore, the value will come back for outside recruitment support to be able to augment that process for them and add that value. So
It's interesting, and you said that client was someone that you knew from previously, right?
yeah.
But I guess for a lot of people maybe aren't aware of their problems, right? So how do you as a business owner then find those clients, and because those are ideal people to to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, it's networking. It's always networking. It's making sure that I'm visible in the market. That the best work that I secure generally comes through referral, or people who have worked with me previously who understand, and we already kind of feel the alignment. For new business development, again, it's using referrals and examples of work and making the connections of similarities of where there's been value that's been added for X client that can also be translated to this new Y client. But it's basically being out and being visible, right? And leveraging the network. It's all about people.
Yeah, and when you spend that time to to network and talk to people, and then make them problem aware, right?
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
this is what I do. This is what I do. That's that bit different, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think, Steph? AI comes into
Mhm.
recruitment. As someone who's seen, the decades pass, recruitment
Yeah.
change and evolve from fax, to emails to now, the use of AI. What impact are you seeing AI have within the space?
God, it's phenomenal. A huge impact. I mean, the landscape's changed beyond any comprehension, and certainly will continue to do so. I think, without trying to be really hyperbolic and existential, when you're talking about AI and recruitment, we're also talking about AI more broadly. So I'll often say to my kids that, when they're feeling nervous or scared or fearful, it's that the manifestation of that physically is the same as kind of excitement and
Yeah.
anticipation. And I guess that's where I'm at with AI just now. I'm incredibly tech curious. I'm really excited about the implications of AI, but I'm also tempering that with an awareness that, there's there's a flip side to the impact that we need to be really mindful of. Recruiters are quite nervous of the impact of AI on our day jobs, as we should be. I think I've been in a lot of meetings and events recently where we've done a lot of patting each other on the back, saying, humans are still a requirement. We can't exist without the human element of AI. I don't actually think that AI is necessarily the part of the problem we need to fear. We need to be most fearful of ourselves in the
Mm.
process, because humans tend to be the single point of failure in everything that we create, whether it's through human emotion, human error, human behaviours. And AI itself is not innately a problem. It's how we implement it and how we operate it, and
Mm.
whether or not we remember that we need to take pause, and it's incumbent on us to look with a holistic view about what the impact of every action is going to be.
Mm.
So AI has changed the landscape already. I think probably what we're looking at, certainly half of recruiters utilising AI in some respect. A lot of that is reactive AI. So, we're prompting on ChatGPT to try and help our processes and our research.
Yeah.
And then when it gets really exciting is obviously agentic AI. So we're actually creating new processes and fully automating, but that is the scary bit. So we just
Yeah.
need to be really mindful.
Where do you think, it's at its most exciting versus most maybe dangerous for
Oh,
recruiters?
well, the overlap is 100% there in every area. We need to be really aware of risk,
Mm.
security, um, bias, all the elements where you take away the human element. The automation then increases the chance of, creating repetitive bias, which we've worked for years to try and remove. We just spoke there about the importance of employer brand and values-driven hiring and understanding people and the nuance of humans.
Yeah.
AI
Mm.
can go so far, but when we're working on algorithm, we're kind of creating a um, a self-fulfilling algorithm, I suppose, really, so that it will maintain a level of bias. That's a danger.
Yeah.
Security, personal information, personal identity. I see a lot of recruiters utilising AI ad hoc at the moment to support with their day-to-day tasks, and not
Mm.
necessarily being aware of the consequences of, I don't know, uploading a candidate CV into
Yeah.
ChatGPT, for example. And we really need to be taking a holistic view from a business perspective on that, to make sure that we're really buttoned down on security, privacy policies. Candidates are really aware of what they're signing up to.
Mm.
Um, AI interviews. I mean, I was interviewed recently about the candidate experience of AI interviews, and I think we're at the front end of that experience and understanding how that's going to roll out. I think there's pros and cons. Again, areas of problems to do with bias, but also candidate experience. Candidates want to feel heard, and candidates want to feel that they're able to influence decision making and advocate for themselves.
Mm.
Sometimes AI is in danger of removing that advocacy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you reminded me, someone telling me that a lot of candidates are turning up to interviews, but with their AI avatars. And
Yeah.
funnily enough, actually passing an interview, showing up for work day one, and both the recruiter and the client being surprised because the avatar looks nothing like
Entirely
the
different.
yeah, and they had no idea, right?
Hmm.
So I remember that person advised, well, if you're a recruiter, if you're a HR, whoever, you
Mm,
need to state clearly the rules on using AI
absolutely.
within
Yeah.
the hiring process, what
I
the
mean,
repercussions could be.
even I did a process recently for a board level role, and the final stage of the interview process was a presentation.
Mm.
And there was 3 candidates in contention at final stage, and they each sent me a copy of their slide deck. And 2 of the slide decks were basically almost identical in
Mm.
format, structure, wording, everything. The third was different. It was patently obvious that two of them had been run through AI and had generated what was a really relevant and really engaging and important slide deck.
Yeah.
The third was entirely unique and very human. But in getting the feedback from the interviews, which I wasn't sitting in on, each presentation was entirely different, because ultimately, the generative piece of the deck became slightly irrelevant when somebody, the human, presented it and brought their own thoughts and personality. But it's a little bit frightening that each of the three decks
Yeah.
almost could have been iterations of each other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, where would you say for a recruiter,
mm.
where does AI start and where does AI stop, or where should it stop in use of it?
Okay. So, any recruiter who is selling or pitching value to a process is always talking about the personal value that they can bring,
No.
the understanding of the client, the innate understanding of the candidates, the ability to be able to match that nuance that you can only do as a human, right? So there are also things as recruiters we are stereotypically not great at doing and take a lot of time.
Yeah.
So the automation of processes, the support in doing research, the support in creating collateral and administrative pieces, all of that's where it really begins for recruitment. And it's the easiest way for people to start to, feel their way with AI as well, to be able to implement bits and pieces here, to augment processes, to speed things up, to get faster results. Where it has to end, I think, is when the human decision making has to come into play. There has to be an opportunity for the sense checking, from an ethics perspective, from a bias perspective, for a security perspective, but also when we're hiring on values and drivers and culture. You wouldn't go on a date with a short list of people curated. Well, you might go on a date with a short list of candidates curated by an AI agent. You might. But in
But
all
you'd want to make the
likelihood,
decision.
you wouldn't allow the AI agent to pick the one for you, the single
Yeah.
one that you were going to marry and spend the rest of your life with. You just wouldn't, because there's a chemistry piece, right? So humans have to interact to be able to firstly monitor and manage the AI to make sure that it's doing the things that it needs to do with the appropriate ethical safeguards, the appropriate, all of those, process-driven safeguards. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, we need to have the chemistry check. It's the human piece. And also, irrespective of what's happening in the process, whether it's AI or whether it's a human, we still have to own responsibility for that as the humans in the process. So if there's inadvertently, for example, an incidence of bias in a process, we as the human that's running the process has to be accountable. It's not accountable to the AI. And that's something that we really need to be cognizant of moving forward, because there needs to be the right safety checks and monitoring underway to make sure that we're able to be accountable.
And I guess that's part of the sort of the question mark and the hesitancy for a lot of people, is that it is a bit the Wild West. There are no rules. There is no best practice. We can transfer best practice from what we already have in place in terms of data protection, right?
Yeah.
You said there about where you put data, how it's stored, right?
Yep.
Whether it's AI or older tech, the rules should apply, have to apply, because
Exactly.
that's the law, right? But the way that a lot of this technology is developing, it is Wild West, and no
It
one's
is.
being advised how they can and cannot
We're living in
use.
beta testing, basically,
Mm,
and feeling our way through it. But I suppose, increasingly there is more awareness. So the ICO are sort of battering down on what's going to be required from a regulatory perspective. The government are slowly rolling out, the AI recommendations for recruitment. But I think that, it's very unlike me to really advocate for regulation and
yeah,
policy. However, I will say in this instance, I think it's incumbent on us at a holistic level to take responsibility for the actions that we're taking right now. I think the danger is that because we're kind of iterating and finding our way through with AI, and it's all very exciting, you have a lot of people who are kind of setting fire to things everywhere. And I
yeah.
think we just need to maybe take a holistic step back to say, well, wait a minute, what is the broader impact? And again, this goes back to my kind of existential feeling on this, in creating efficiencies for business here, what's the impact on people's lifestyles? What's
Mm.
the impact on society and civilization that we've created, what's, if we're reducing the amount of jobs due to the implementation of AI, what are those people doing? How are we also generating income from a taxation perspective if hours
Yeah.
worked are dropping? What is up? So we're shifting the parameters of everything. So there needs to be a holistic view on how we do that mindfully and carefully.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will have some good examples of this as well. We've had previous guests on that have said exactly the human element. So
Mm.
you have every recruiter has placed a candidate at a company, and it's been an amazing experience for that candidate. It's
Mm.
changed their life. For someone who's been in recruitment for quite a long time, there may be people that have devoted their lives to that company. They've
Yeah.
grown from a low level to all the way up to execs. They've met
Yep.
the partner at that company. They've
Yes.
they've built a life.
Yep.
They've moved countries. And that's all started from that recruitment process
Mm-hmm.
of Stephanie seeing the CV, doing the interview, and then figuring out, okay, you are best for
Yep.
this position, and that's changed their life, right?
Yeah.
And that decision making process. Um, Recruiters are doing that on a daily basis
Yeah.
and really changing people's lives as a result, right? And if
Yes.
that decision making process away to something that's automated,
Mm-hmm.
that's very dangerous. Yeah.
A specific example, from early on in my career, in exec search, I approached a chap who, quite frankly, on paper, was not going to be the right fit for a slight shift in job role and career direction. However, I knew him well. And there was something that, you build a relationship with clients and candidates where, in the old school chat, we used to say, fill on the phone. I'd pick up the
Yeah.
phone to a client and say, I don't have a CV yet, but trust
Mm,
me, you need to see this person, and this is what you need to focus on, and this is what you need to ask them and qualify.
mm,
And from that initial interaction, that individual's career trajectory kind of shifted. But also, I've seen him move from the northeast of Scotland to Europe to North America to settle and have a family in Canada
wow.
to go on to be an entrepreneur himself. And he's, it's not that I created that. It was just for me personally, Steph. It's the ability to see more than a CV
Yeah.
and more than the rules and the pattern on a
Mm,
page. We're, it, we're intrinsically human, and it's about being able
mm,
to see the human that sits around that.
yeah. Perfect example. I think recruiters get overlooked
Mm,
in that transformation they can have for candidates, right? Is what always focus on the clients and
yep.
what they need, but it's the candidates that are building lives off the back of those jobs,
And
right?
the candidates will often be the biggest advocates for recruiters, to be honest, because if as a candidate, if you build a relationship with the recruiter, that relationship can last through your career. I have
Mm,
candidates in my network who I placed first 20 years ago, and
mm,
they'll still come back to me. It might not be me that places them every single time, but they come to me for advice because they know that I know them and they know that I can speak to them objectively. I'm not a friend, I'm not family. I can be objective and I can look at their careers professionally. And that's a relationship that is built up over a lifetime of
mm,
experience. So
mm,
that can't be substituted with
mm.
an algorithm. It can be
Yeah,
augmented, but yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, I will ask you a question then. I ask everyone that joins on the show. If you could get AI automation tech to take one part of your job as a business owner, as a recruiter, and it's like, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. That's taken care of. What would have the biggest impact for you and
Oh,
for your business?
already is. Things like, the things that take time in recruitment but take us away from doing the really valuable human elements of recruitment. And particularly actually now I'm working independently, I'm really mindful of, having to do everything. So
Mm,
the administrative, the automated, the process driven parts, even down to things like writing a job ad. So if you have a fairly generic job, quite often a client will pass you a painfully generic job ad. And one of the things that I love doing is actually bringing the client and the cultural piece and all of the sort of nuance of the opportunity and creating that job ad.
yeah.
However, in the moments where, you're under pressure for time or it's not the priority, being able to get the support from an AI intervention to be able to help with that, to get the initial idea rolling and to
Mm.
iterate something that you can then work with, that's invaluable. But then also similarly, the transactional elements of process, I despise having to allocate interview slots, for example, the back and forth and the toing and froing of coordinating and scheduling the interviews and people, and the time lapses. And so being able to automate those parts of process to
Mm.
free humans up to do the human part is
Yeah.
incredibly powerful.
Yeah. It's if you do it more than 3 times a day in one day, it should be
It
automated.
should be automated. Exactly. And the things that really don't give you energy, so it might be
Mm.
different for different people. Some people love writing. Some people love the creativity of that. Other people are bored and other people are just not very good at it, and
Mm.
also, there's no denying that AI will really help people with dyslexia or,
Yeah.
ADHD, or there's lots of really positive inputs there. But it's utilizing AI where it helps you focus on the areas that give you the most energy and you get the most enjoyment out of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, exactly. Very well said. Yeah. I mean, Stephanie, going forward into the
Mm.
next sort of 6 months, 1 year, what do you have in the pipeline? You're obviously, Leitmotif is fairly new, right?
Yes,
I
yeah,
guess sort of
brand new,
exciting.
still
What
baby.
exciting plans do you have coming up?
So my big, hairy, audacious goal for year one is to work with a minimum of 80% plus clients with sustainability and purpose, woven through strategy, as we've said. At the moment, we're sitting on 100%. Really aware that as numbers increase statistically, that will be diluted, but my focus is on maintaining that. I am working with an incubator group of companies which are all connected through funding that are all scaling and looking at the first elements of commercializing their businesses through funding
Oh,
into
wow.
commercialization. So I'm doing a lot of consultancy and then the hiring for that, which is really exciting. So more
Yeah.
of that, but it's, the market is a tough, sticky place at the moment. It's worth acknowledging that it's a tough place for candidates and a tough place for clients to exist right now. So we all just have to really support each other. The network is, as we've said, everything. So.
Yeah. I mean, you have touched upon this obviously through the podcast, but who is an ideal client to reach out to you?
Oh, so my kind of key client persona is an SME that is looking for growth, that is looking for a partner that will be able to add value where value is needed, that doesn't necessarily need to shoehorn ownership of process, but can actually augment and consult.
Uh,
And as we said, a client that is looking to move forward, if not already, looking to implement sustainable practices, communicate sustainable process and commitments, and works with purpose, values, and drivers at the core.
Brilliant. And
It's not
I
much to
would.
ask.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone listening today, they feel that. I think a real key takeaway is, the alignment, right? Having alignment
Yes.
with who you work with. That's
Yeah.
very, very, very important. It's maybe a simple thing, but it's something that gets overlooked. And when we're looking at the future world that we want for our children, that we
Hmm.
want, to develop and to grow into, sustainability should be at
Yeah.
the heart of it, and it is
Yep.
an issue that's been kind of brought up again and again, ignored,
Yep.
brought up again, ignored. But I really, advocate for anyone listening that has that alignment. Definitely reach out to Stephanie
Thank you.
because that's if you've got that core, then you need to be working with people that also have that as their core.
Absolutely. Yep.
Brilliant. And what are the best contact details to get you on, Stephanie?
Oh, so you can get me on LinkedIn or you can get me at steph@leitmotifpartners.co.uk.
Brilliant. I will. I'll put that email address
Fab.
and your LinkedIn profile down below in the comments.
Super. Great.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I suppose key takeaways from today, Steph. I would say number
Mm.
one, what we just said there. Alignment, and this goes beyond sustainability. I would say,
Hmm.
in whatever way that you are at your core, you should be finding a recruiter. You should be finding partners that
Yeah.
are aligned in a similar fashion.
Yep.
And within the sustainability space, Stephanie is the person that you
Right.
you need to align with. And
Absolutely.
and second, really, really strongly, what you said there about the the human decision making process. within recruitment, it's so valuable. It does have life-changing
Yeah.
consequences, and that has to be the core of recruitment.
Hmm.
Anything else can be automated, can have that assistance.
Yeah.
There are going to be rules and checks, things that will come into place, that's for sure. But that
Hmm.
decision-making process, that is what makes a recruiter, and
Absolutely.
that should never be forgotten.
Absolutely. Listen, recruitment is 100 years old as an industry,
Mm,
really commercialized in the 40s and 50s, but there's been a space created for recruitment because it's been a requirement. That's not going to go away.
yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And everyone listening, thank you very much for listening. Please like and share this video so we can get this message out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much.